Uh, Difficulties of being different. You see, I feed my soul food just so I can see the difference. See, broken mirrors in my spirit so I can't even see my visions. But we pay the cost to be different, but where do we go if we're dead but our soul is living? You should write a poem, Josh. That's what my mama told me right after Mother's Day 2012. So I actually laughed and said, "You mean that William Shakespeare type of crap?" She said, "You'd be a good writer." So I decided to sleep on it, and the next day after I finished all my work, I gave this thing called poetry a try. So then I asked myself, what do I write about? And immediately I think of racism in America. So I write like a whole poem in 20 minutes. I named that poem Mixtape of Love. So I brought my poem to both of my parents and they loved it. You see, but the thing is that I never felt loved by anyone until that day. But that night I felt like I could do better. In terms of my writing, my poems were good, but I just wasn't satisfied, and my emotions were at war with each other. There was a time period during summer of 2013 that I hated myself. I negatively degraded myself. And then the next summer I hated myself even more. But how do I love me for just being me? Where do I start? Well, it's the essence of poetry that embraced me. I depended on my poems to free my emotions, but I was so fed up with myself, I even wrote a 2-page poem named I Am Not Loved. I began to live with my past and look to the future. I began to accept all that I did before, and I began to respect myself because I am a human person, a talented young individual. I've always wanted to perform since I first started writing poetry. Like I always wanted to have the spotlight on me. I always wanted to feel like it was my time to prove that I can really do this. So my first performance was at the Mommy's TLC Gala at this like bar type of place. Thing is, I wasn't even supposed to be there because it was 21 and up only. So when I walked in to perform, my heart was beating and beating and racing and racing, and I was sweating and sweating. And then I just said my name and a few things about mommies. Then I gave the name of my poem and started my performance. My poem was called Limitations, about the limits that society puts on people. When I started, my heart immediately stopped. And then I got into my poem, and when I got the groove of it, I felt like I was unstoppable. I'll never forget that feeling. So whenever I'm about to perform in public, I tell myself just to be my true self. So now I look back on my old self and realize who I was back then and how hating myself has really made me love myself even more. I saw my old self as a liar, or as a person I was never true to who I wanted to become. Because now I realize that I don't need to seek the love of others. Now I realize that in the real world, everyone isn't going to accept you just because you're different or just because you're plain old you. So now I strive to be different. I strive to be away from the norm. I strive to look into different things. I strive to ask questions about everything. I strive to receive knowledge and give knowledge. I strive to look at the beauty in things labeled ugly by society. I strive to be free. I strive to be me.
We could all never gonna think away. We could all thinking, just thinking, just thinking away. Just thinking, got me up thinking away. thinking, just thinking, let's think away. Just thinking, just thinking, just thinking.